In the center of the Galactic Senate, surrounded by the cold geometry of alien logic and arrogance, humanity was nothing more than a memory. At least that's what they told themselves. The human ban had been signed 50 years ago, after what the Council called the Earth Rebellion. It was a fancy way of saying that humans didn't obey. When the Federation came to absorb Earth into its system, taxes, conscription, language laws, humans resisted, fought back, burned outposts, hacked systems, and then vanished. They called it extinction, officially, quietly. Unofficially, it became a joke, a recurring bit of humor among the senators and dignitaries. Remember the humans? Someone would chuckle during a recess. Tiny, loud, chaotic little things, too emotional to survive. Until today. Today the Grand Chamber was full, not for a hearing, not for a bill. It was packed because of a security breach. Something had been uploaded to the intergalactic network from an unknown source, traced back to the Deep Quadrant, where Earth used to be. A hollow footage file, encrypted with ancient Terran code. They brought it in on a sealed data crystal, surrounded by drones and a full military escort, as if it might explode. In a way, it would. Chairman Korlax of the Vannery Confederation, a four-eyed, thin-skinned creature with a smug habit of licking his lips before speaking, stood up and raised one bony hand. "Let's not dramatize a ghost story," he said, voice slick. "We'll play it, we'll laugh, and we'll delete it." Murmurs of agreement echoed around. The Draxian ambassador even let out a burbling giggle. He leaned toward the Karthik twins, whispering, "Bet it's just another primate beating a drum or throwing mud." The lights dimmed. The file played. At first it was static, then a flicker, then a view from a drone's perspective. Low to the ground, night vision engaged. A ruined building, broken roads, shattered glass everywhere. The kind of place you'd see in a war zone, except there were no soldiers, no flags, just a voice. Male, calm, very human. "You banned us, you erased us from your charts, but you forgot one thing." The drone turned a corner. There was a boy, maybe 12 years old, sitting cross-legged in front of a fire. No shoes, no shirt, just scars and dirt. He looked up, directly into the drone's lens. "We watched, we learned, and we remember everything you did." Another flicker. Then it switched to feeds, dozens of them. Military bases across alien worlds hacked open. Cameras inside Federation ships going dark just before catastrophic explosions. Footage of alien leaders, including some in that very room, laughing about wiping the monkeys out. The Draxian ambassador stopped giggling. Then came the worst part. Footage from a Terran lab, long hidden, long thought destroyed. Biological projects, neural hacking, guerrilla tactics, teaching children to dismantle weapons blindfolded. Not cruelty. Strategy. Necessity. There was no Earth government anymore, only cells, units, families teaching families to survive. One clip showed a teenage girl in a burned-out subway tunnel, building something from scrap metal and a Federation beacon. The thing she built made Federation ships fall out of the sky like stones. We adapted. The feed cut again. Now scenes of recent events, ships lost in supposedly stable zones, unexplained disappearances of elite squads, security footage blinking out for 6 seconds before reappearing with everyone inside. Gone. And then a final message. "You thought you banned us. You just reminded us what we are. We're not extinct. We're hiding, and we're waiting." Keep laughing. The screen went black. No one said a word. Not even Korlax. His lips twitched, but no sound came out. It was the Draxian ambassador who broke the silence. "How recent was that last footage?" The security officer, pale green with shaking hands, stuttered, 48 hours ago, sir." No one laughed. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was choking, thick, heavy. The kind of silence that happens when powerful people realize they've underestimated something for too long, and now it might be too late. Korlak sat down slowly, his long fingers curled tightly around the arms of his chair. This must be a fabrication, he muttered, but no one backed him, not even the loyalists. The footage was too clean, too connected, too real. Ambassador Sholtar of the Vile Dominion leaned forward, his deep voice uncharacteristically shaky. Didn't the last known human stronghold fall, 47 cycles ago? That was the Sol Reclamation, wasn't it? No, replied the data analyst from the security wing, a trembling young Kavari barely out of training. That's what the report said. But there was no confirmed body count, just scorched land and missing assets, we assumed. He paused. We wanted to believe they were gone. A murmur spread across the room like a virus. Assumptions, propaganda, celebrated victories that may have been smoke and ash. For decades they had used the image of the wild human as a bedtime story for cadets. Dangerous, emotional, unpredictable. The bogeyman of discipline. But no one asked what happened to those they didn't kill. The real terror now wasn't that humans were alive. It was that they had been planning. Chairman Korlax cleared his throat, trying to salvage his dominance. We must immediately recalibrate our surveillance on Earth's coordinates and all surrounding systems. If there is any activity, it must be neutralized. I propose a resolution of eradication. His words had all the weight of authority, but they were hollow. Everyone saw it. General Thrask of the Xanthi fleet, who once bombed moons with laughter, spoke next. With respect, Chairman, neutralize what? His voice was low, heavy with a rare mix of fear and admiration. We don't know where they are. We don't know who they are anymore. That girl in the tunnel? She turned a broken beacon into a gravity disruptor. Do you understand what that means? They're decades ahead of us in covert tech, and they learned it while in hiding. And they filmed it, whispered someone from the back. They wanted us to see it. A new screen flickered to life. Nobody had activated it. It was live footage. Real time. Coordinates pinged instantly in the room, inside the security archives, right beneath the Senate Hall. The feed showed a Federation officer lying unconscious on the floor, blood dripping from his forehead. His weapon, standard-issue plasma, was gone. The camera shifted, showing a symbol scrawled across the wall in dark red. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even words. It was a handprint. 5 fingers. Human. Beneath it, a date. Today's. Gasps rang out like detonations. Alarms started blaring across the building. Korlax jumped to his feet, screaming, "Seal the chamber! Lock every level!" But it was too late. The doors sealed. Just not the way he wanted. One by one, every emergency exit clanged shut with a metallic finality. The room dimmed again. Lights flickered. Then the voice returned. This is your only warning. You banned us. You mocked us. Now you've seen us. You called us emotional, unstable, savage. The voice paused. Then with chilling softness, you were right. A hum started deep beneath their feet. Not loud, but unmistakably deliberate. Power was rerouting somewhere. Korlax's claws scratched the console, screaming for override. Denied. All of them were now prisoners, in the most secure room in the galaxy. And the humans had the key. Somewhere in the dark, someone whispered what everyone else was thinking. They're already inside. The silence turned into chaos. Sirens screamed from hidden corners, echoing off the polished obsidian walls of the Senate chamber. Security drones dropped from the ceiling, whirring to life, but they didn't lock onto a target. They hovered in place, confused, uncertain, then slowly began turning inward. A few even pointed at the senators themselves. Korlax was shouting into his comm band, demanding immediate evacuation. "Priority clearance! I am the High Chairman of the Federation Council." But all he got was static. The system was deaf now. Ambassador Sholtar stood slowly, his wide reptilian eyes fixed on the live feed still playing on the main screen. The security archive room was completely deserted now, save for the single red human handprint and the unconscious guard. "They were here," he said quietly, as if saying it louder might break something fragile. "They came inside the most secure building in the galaxy and left us a message. Not just a message," growled General Thrask, standing beside his chair with arms folded. "A demonstration." Senator Kiri, from the Teleferry cluster, a species known for their logic and emotional coldness, finally showed the tiniest crack in her expression. What kind of species does that? Gets banned, hunted, erased from records, then survives in silence, only to send a message wrapped in psychological warfare? Everyone already knew the answer. Humans. That's what kind of species. For decades they'd mocked the emotion, the chaos, the spite of humanity. They thought that making humans illegal would erase the problem, that banning an entire species from galactic society was enough to suppress their rage. But humans didn't forget. They didn't die off like weak things are supposed to. They adapted. They hid. They became shadows with teeth. And now, they had chosen this moment to remind the galaxy why they should have never been underestimated. The lights flickered again. Then the screen changed. This wasn't recorded footage now. It was a live camera. From inside the chamber. There, in the upper rafter of the grand dome, hidden in the scaffolding above the delegation ring, stood a human. No armor, no weapon. Just a young man in dark, patchwork clothes. He looked down with a calm, unreadable expression, one hand holding a simple black box. Several senators screamed. Drones swarmed upward to intercept, but exploded before they reached him. Silent, precise detonations. As if he'd known exactly how long it would take them to react. He didn't run. He just raised his voice loud enough to echo. "You hunted us like animals, forced us underground. You murdered civilians and called it pacification. And then you celebrated our extinction." His words were calm, almost surgical. But extinction is a slow process. And humans... He smiled, just barely. "We evolved to survive it." Korlax drew his own sidearm, decorative, rarely used, but functional, and pointed it upward with a trembling hand. "Stand down. I am authorizing your immediate execution." The human didn't flinch. He pressed something on the black box. Not a weapon. A projector. Holograms flashed in the air, forming faces. Children, women, old men, all human. All faces from the so-called eradicated colonies. Images of mass graves, bombings, fields turned to ash. "You erased our history," the human said, stepping to the edge of the scaffolding. "So we kept it ourselves. We memorized everything. The names of every commander who ordered the burnings, every senator who voted for the human ban, every officer who stood by and watched." His gaze swept the room. "And we've come back to remind you." General Thrask took a step forward, his voice rough. "Is this vengeance? Do you want war?" The human tilted his head. "No," he said, then added quietly, "We already won." And with that, he leapt from the rafter. Gasps rang out, but he didn't fall. A shimmer caught him mid-air, some kind of cloaked transport, invisible, silent. It vanished before even the fastest security sensors could trace it. By the time the drone scanned the air, there was nothing left but the echo of his voice. We were never gone. Inside the chamber, a cold realization spread. They hadn't just underestimated the humans. They had trained them. By banning them, by hunting them, by forcing them into hiding, they had created the most dangerous kind of enemy. one that remembers. The Senate chamber didn't recover that day. In fact, it didn't recover for weeks. After the human infiltrator vanished, the council stayed locked down for 12 hours. Security sweeps turned up nothing. No trace of entry, no data logs, no biometric anomalies. It was like the man had never been there at all, except he had. And now, the rest of the galaxy knew it too. The footage was leaked within hours. Not just the message from the human, but the entire meeting. Every stammer, every flicker of fear on Korlax's face, every panicked shout from the high senators, captured and streamed across every channel from the core worlds to the mining outposts on the galactic rim. The message was clear. Humans were back, and they hadn't forgiven a damn thing. On Delta Verac, a military base that once proudly displayed a mural of Earth's pacification, the walls were defaced overnight. A human sigil, just a simple handprint and a year, 2149. Nobody saw who did it. Cameras had gone offline for 6 minutes. On Zuneth Prime, a cargo ship disappeared from its dock. No explosions, no theft, no damage. Just gone. The last message from the ship's AI core was chilling. They are here. They remember. The Federation tried to spin it as terrorism. Rogue sympathizers, they said. Isolated cases, delusions from fringe colonies. But no one believed it, because the pattern was too sharp, too deliberate. These weren't attacks. They were reminders. Surgical, psychological strikes. They didn't destroy cities. They erased confidence. On the 7th day after the Senate breach, Chairman Korlax appeared on the galactic broadcast. For the first time in living memory, he looked uncertain. His robes were wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and his usual polished sneer had dulled into forced composure. "To the citizens of the Federation," he began, "I address you not as a leader, but as a servant of peace. Recent disturbances involving so-called human resurgence have caused unnecessary panic. I assure you our response will be swift and—" The screen glitched. Only for a second. Then the feed was hijacked. Again. This time the screen didn't show the human's face. It showed old footage. From the war. Grainy, real, brutal footage. A human woman running through smoke with a child in her arms. Federation soldiers firing at retreating civilians. Bombs falling on cities that didn't even fight back. Then images of mass graves, charred bone. Federation logos stamped into rubble. A caption appeared. "Peace without justice is just the silence of the buried." Then black screen. Broadcast cut. Panic spread like a storm. Not on the battlefield. There was none yet. But in the minds of every species that had cheered Earth's burning. Embassies began recalling their officials. Private colonies hired their own mercenaries. Security companies made billions overnight. The illusion of safety had shattered. Meanwhile, down on the lower levels of the core worlds, where the cameras rarely went, whispers grew louder. Some said the humans had spies inside the Federation. Others said they had sleeper agents born in secret colonies, raised to look like other species through biotech manipulation. A few claimed the humans were no longer human at all. What nobody realized yet, what nobody wanted to realize, was that this wasn't the beginning of a war. This was the second act of one that had never truly ended. In a hidden bunker on a moon the Federation once mined and abandoned, two humans sat across from each other at a table cluttered with devices. One, older, bearded, eyes hollow, but burning. The other, younger, calm, with the same black box the Senate infiltrator had carried. "They took the bait," the older one said, scrolling through intercepted panic logs. "Just like we planned. We should escalate." The younger man replied. "They still think they have time, that they can contain us." The older man shook his head. "Not yet. We wait. Let the fear settle. Let them start turning on each other first." He tapped the table. Victory doesn't come through violence. He looked the young man in the eyes, voice low. It comes when your enemy destroys themselves. 3 weeks after the Senate incident, the fractures became visible. Not on battlefields. There were none. The real war was happening in boardrooms, back-channel meetings, encrypted comms, and late-night emergency broadcasts filled with thinly veiled panic. The Federation, once unified in arrogance, was now splintering under the weight of something they didn't understand. Fear. Not of war, but of humiliation. You're telling me humans have infiltrated our central data hubs, stolen military records, hacked fleet routes, and all we've done is issue public relations statements? Roared Admiral Zethos of the Targathi Armada, slamming a 3-clawed hand onto the conference table. We are containing the situation, Korlax said tightly, though the bags under his eyes told another story. We've already deployed blackout protocols to all outer colonies. If there are rogue elements— Rogue? Zethos snarled. You watched the footage, Chairman. That was organized, coordinated. That was not a lone actor. That was a ghost army. You banned them, erased them, and somehow they've returned with more intelligence, more leverage, and more support than ever before? Support. That was the word no one wanted to say out loud, because it was true. Not all the Federation's colonies had agreed with the human ban back then. Some had complied only under pressure, military, economic, or cultural. Others had kept quiet, nodded publicly, and looked away as Earth burned. Now those same factions were quietly re-evaluating their loyalties. On the mining colony of Rothan 5, a message scrawled in human standard was found on the side of a fuel tank. We remember who stayed silent. The workers went on strike the next morning. On Arxenium Prime, a professor was arrested after playing the Senate footage during a history lecture. His students rioted. Half the academy shut down within days. And on Vastra 12, a fleet ship vanished mid-jump. No trace. No explosion. The logs showed it had received a single incoming transmission moments before disappearance. You are not the enemy, but you are in the way. The Federation scrambled for answers, but the humans gave none. Instead, they kept seeding fear, whispering reminders of crimes long buried, of lies told to children who'd been taught the war was just, that humanity had been savage and deserving of exile. And now, as those children grew up, many weren't so sure. Even inside the military ranks, doubts were growing. Lieutenant Commander Vakara, stationed on the border patrol cruiser Vigilance, watched the intercepted human footage for the 10th time. She'd been just a cadet when Earth fell. She still remembered the celebration broadcasts, the parades, the propaganda. But something had always bothered her. No species resists annihilation so completely without reason. And now, the face of that young man in the Senate haunted her. Not angry, not wild, just precise, focused, like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. She turned to her second-in-command, a grizzled old Korathi veteran named Soldek. "Do you believe what they said?" she asked quietly. "That we started it?" Soldek didn't answer right away, just stared out the window at the cold stars. Then he said, "I was there. Not on Earth, but on one of the relay stations during the burn." "You never told me that." "Didn't want to." She waited. Finally, he added, "We bombed refugee ships. Not because they were a threat, but because we were told humans don't surrender. So we made sure they didn't get the chance." Vakara looked away, her throat tightening. That night, she accessed restricted archives. She began to read. All across the galaxy, people were doing the same. And that was the true genius of what the humans had done. They hadn't fired a single shot. They had simply reminded the galaxy of the truth, and let the rot surface on its own. Back in the hidden bunker, the younger operative placed a new message packet on the table. "The dissident forums are boiling," he said. 3 colonies have started questioning the legality of the human ban. The older man nodded slowly. Good. The Federation can survive a war. It can't survive doubt. Then he opened a screen. It showed Korlax, alone, drinking. A hollow shell of the smug leader he used to be. Soon, the old human said. He'll beg us to talk. Chairman Korlax stared at the glass in his trembling hand. It wasn't his first drink of the night, not even his third. But it was the only one that didn't bring a moment of numbness. No matter how much he swallowed, the voices still echoed in his head. The human's voice from the Senate dome, the words that had haunted every waking hour since. You were right. That simple, terrifying admission still chilled him. For all the Federation's technology, diplomacy, and control, they had never truly understood what they'd been dealing with. Humanity didn't just survive extermination, they turned it into purpose. And now that purpose was unraveling the Federation from the inside out. The secure door to his quarters buzzed. He didn't answer. It buzzed again, then slid open without his approval. He spun, fury returning briefly, only to see Admiral Zethos striding in, his armored frame crackling with frustration. "We need to talk," the Targathi said flatly, without preamble. Korlax downed the rest of the drink and slumped into the chair like a defeated animal. "Let me guess. Another colony is threatening secession." 3, Zethos growled. "And that's just today. They're invoking Article 7 of the Interstellar Accords. Refusal to support institutional genocide." Korlax blinked. That law was never meant to apply to the Federation itself. "It does now," Zethos snarled. "You built this house of lies, and now the walls are caving in. The humans haven't even fired on us, and we're tearing each other apart." There was a pause. Korlax rubbed his eyes. "What do you propose?" The Admiral hesitated. "We need to negotiate." Korlax froze. "Negotiate?" he whispered. "With them?" "With the animals who hacked our systems, who infiltrated our chambers, who branded our shame across every broadcast." "They were only showing what we did." Zethos snapped. "You think I like this? I burned a dozen human holdouts in the war. I watched them dig tunnels beneath our bases like rats. I respected their ability to survive, even as I slaughtered them. But now?" He leaned forward. "Now they have something worse than weapons. They have the truth." Korlax looked up, eyes hollow. "They want to destroy us." Zethos laughed bitterly. "No, Chairman. If they wanted to destroy us, we'd already be gone. No, they want us to look at ourselves, and that's what terrifies you." Before Korlax could respond, the comlink on his desk flared to life. Unencrypted, no source, just a single audio file. He reached for it, hand shaking. A voice came through, calm, steady, human. "Chairman Korlax, it's time we spoke, not through proxies, not with sabotage, but directly." Zethos straightened. "That's live. It's not a recording." The voice continued. "We will contact you at a time of our choosing. You will listen. Or the next message won't come through your comms. It'll come through your ship's firewalls, your atmosphere processors, your currency networks. You exiled us to extinction. We turned that into evolution." The line cut. Korlax stared at the blinking console, his fingers twitching like static nerves. Then, for the first time in decades, he felt something he had long forgotten. Not fear, not even guilt. Shame. Across the galaxy, the Federation's grip continued to weaken. Military officials were resigning. Civilians were marching in streets. Statues of war heroes from the Earth Rebellion were being torn down. Activist groups were re-emerging, groups that had been silent for decades, now emboldened by the idea that humanity hadn't been a monster, just a mirror. The cracks were spreading, and humanity hadn't lifted a single weapon. Back in the hidden command center, buried under the crust of an uncharted moon once abandoned by the Federation. The elder operative watched the feed from Korlax's quarters. "He's breaking," he murmured, hands folded calmly. The younger agent beside him nodded. "The others are watching, even the ones who still hate us. They're curious now." "Curiosity," the old man said softly, "is the beginning of rebellion." They turned to another screen where dozens of faces waited, encrypted transmissions from across the galaxy. Not just humans. Telephory, Draxian, Karathi, members of the Federation. Traitors, some would call them. All ready to listen. "Time for the second wave," the old man said. He pressed a button, and across hundreds of systems, another message echoed. "The Federation taught us to fight. Now we fight with what they fear most: memory, proof, and purpose. We are not coming to kill you. We're coming to show you what you've become." The revolution didn't begin with explosions. It began with silence. Systems that used to hum with orders from the Federation's central network went dark. Not all at once, just enough to be noticed. Banking AIs refused transactions. Agricultural drones began spraying crops in wild patterns. Starport's schedule data scrambled itself with ghost entries, ships that didn't exist showing up on manifests. And always, just before the systems crashed, there it was, the handprint. Red. Human. The Federation tried to contain the narrative. They sent envoys to calm the colonies, issued emergency statements denying any infiltration, and blamed everything on malfunction, foreign sabotage, or rogue sympathizers. But no one listened anymore. Because people had started remembering. Whole generations who had grown up with the story that humans were beasts, violent, chaotic, unworthy of galactic society, were watching footage that had never been shown before. Cities in flames, children behind fences, evacuation ships shot down mid-flight. And for what? Because humanity wouldn't kneel. Now, the Federation's past wasn't just haunting them, it was being broadcast in 8K clarity. In one of the outer colonies, a small rebellion bloomed quietly. It wasn't even organized at first, just a few students spray-painting quotes from the leaked human broadcasts onto security checkpoints. "You erased our names, so we made them impossible to forget." Then a security captain quit his post. Then two more. Then the supply chain froze. And that was the pattern. Not armies, not invasions, just carefully planted seeds of doubt. Then came defiance. And then decay. In the upper chambers of the Galactic Council, panic had evolved into desperation. "They're weaponizing truth," Senator Kiri of the Telefari whispered at an emergency session. Her pale hands trembled, a rare sign of emotion from a species bred for logic. "We can't shoot propaganda. We can't detain memory." General Thrask looked at her, his voice low. "Then the Federation has already lost." Chairman Korlax sat silently in his chair, barely speaking now. He hadn't slept in days. He barely ate. He had once ruled the galaxy with his voice. Now he feared even the echo of it. Because what could he say? We did what we thought was right? We followed orders? We didn't know? Every excuse had already been torn apart by the humans, using the Federation's own records. The humans weren't waging war. They were staging a trial. And every broadcast, every leak, every sudden failure of infrastructure. It was evidence. The real trial wasn't happening in a courtroom. It was happening in the minds of every being who had once cheered when Earth burned. Korlax finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Send a message." "To who?" Thrask asked. "To them," Korlax croaked. "Tell them I'll meet." The reply came within the hour. No name, no confirmation, just coordinates. They led to a derelict communications station in deep space, floating abandoned since the early days of the Federation. Korlax went alone. No guards, no entourage, no weapons. He entered the station with only one item, a small data pad containing the original human ban resolution, with his signature glowing cold and clear at the bottom. The chamber inside was dark, dust clinging to every corner. Screens flickered weakly. It smelled of metal and ghosts. And then, out of the shadows, he saw him. The same young man who had stood in the Senate rafters, calm, still, watching. "You came," the man said. Korlak swallowed. "You left me no choice." "That's not true," the man said. "You had plenty of choices. You just didn't like any of them." Korlak stepped closer, holding out the datapad. This was a mistake." The human didn't take it. No, it wasn't. It was a choice, made in fear, signed in arrogance, and carried out with fire. The chairman's hand dropped. He stared at the floor. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. The human leaned forward. "Not from you," he said softly. "From them." He tapped the side of the wall. A screen lit up. Dozens of faces, senators, generals, governors, all tuned into the feed. "This is your reckoning," the human said, not shouting, just declaring. "Not with us, with yourselves. We aren't here to conquer, we're here to remember, loud enough that no one ever forgets again." Korlax looked into the lens, and for the first time in his life said the words that had never passed his lips. "I was wrong." The human nodded. "That's a start." The broadcast of Chairman Korlax's confession shattered the last illusion. He said the words "live" on every frequency, in every language, translated into the dialects of 300 species and broadcast across the network that once proudly called itself the Voice of the Federation. "I was wrong," he had said. "We were wrong." It was the admission no one expected, the apology no one believed would ever come, the truth every species had buried under layers of propaganda and pride, and it was only the beginning. In the hours that followed, a cascade began. Archived footage of the Earth Rebellion was declassified, most of it by former Federation insiders who, until now, feared exposure. Medical records, communications between admirals, orders from high-ranking senators, recordings of colony governors joking about human extermination quotas, and then, most damning of all, the Red Directive, a classified document that revealed what many had only whispered about. The extermination campaign against humanity was never about peace, it was about fear. Humanity was advancing too quickly, challenging too many systems, questioning the structure of a galaxy built on silent obedience. They weren't wiped out because they were dangerous. They were wiped out because they were different, because they refused to be tamed. Across the Federation, riots broke out, not in support of humans, but in outrage against their own leaders. Statues were pulled down, museums scrubbed clean. Planetary assemblies issued formal apologies. Some colonies went further, denouncing the Federation outright and declaring themselves independent. The great machine of control was grinding to a halt, gears breaking under the weight of undeniable memory. Humanity didn't lift a single weapon. They simply forced the galaxy to look in the mirror. In a vast hollow on a moon long since lost from star maps, hundreds of humans gathered beneath the ground. Families, elders, fighters, children. They watched the final transmission together, projected on the curved ceiling like stars. Korlax's face, gaunt and broken. His voice, shaking with the weight of guilt. The old man, the one who had been guiding the entire movement from the shadows, stood quietly in the center, arms crossed behind his back. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The younger operative stepped up beside him. "It's done," he whispered. "They know now." The old man nodded. "Then we've won." But the younger one hesitated. "And what now? Do we go back? Do we try to rejoin them?" The silence stretched. Then the old man said, "We don't go back to what was. What was is gone. We go forward. We build something better. We remember. And we teach the rest of the galaxy what memory costs when it's denied. A small child in the crowd, no more than 6, raised her hand and asked, "Are they still our enemies?" The old man knelt down to her level and smiled softly. "No," he said. "They're not our enemies anymore. Now they're our witnesses." Across the galaxy, change came in slow, uneven waves. Some worlds welcomed the truth. Others resisted it. There were still those who hated humans, who called the apology a ploy, who warned that vengeance would come next. But it didn't, because the humans never came to conquer. They had already won the only war they ever cared about, the war to be remembered rightly. And in the most ironic twist of all, it was the Federation who taught them how to do it. It was the exile, the fire, the genocide that made them strong, made them patient, made them relentless. They turned their pain into planning, their mourning into movement, and their silence into a voice so loud it couldn't be drowned out by all the stars in the sky. They didn't reclaim Earth. They didn't raise new flags. They didn't need to. They had exposed the truth and left the galaxy to decide what to do with it. In time, monuments would be built, not to honor heroes, but to mourn what was lost and to remind every species that once upon a time they tried to erase a people. But those people learned to hide in the dark, and when they returned, they didn't come back to beg for a place. They came back to remind the stars, "You can ban the human, you can burn the human, but you will never forget the human."